Hello, and welcome to the virtual book launch for An Educator's Guide for Using Your Three Eyes, How to Apply Intellect, Insight, and Intuition to Promote Personal and School-Wide Transformation. My name is Megan Sweet. I'm the author of the book, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. Please go ahead and grab a pencil or pen and a piece of paper, something to take notes with, because we will be using it throughout the course of this webinar, giving you some key strategies to practice and to take away from our talk today. During the webinar, we'll also be talking about some of the core concepts in the book and why this feels like an important place for us to start as educators. Who am I? I'm Megan Sweet. I'm a lifetime educator. I started out as a teacher. I taught middle school for about 10 years. And then I transitioned to being a school administrator. I helped to found a school in East Oakland, actually to redesign a school in East Oakland that was failing, and it's now one of the most successful schools in our school district. I also have a doctoral degree in educational leadership, and I studied how to create effective change in education settings and have been applying that research to my professional work over the last 10 years, primarily working as either consultant with school districts or from within a school district, helping to lead changes across the whole system. So those include doing more school redesigns, helping school communities to redesign themselves, but also supporting school districts to implement large-scale changes. And in California, I also helped to support the state adjust to a new way of funding all schools across the state, and spent a year or two traveling around the state helping school districts to make meaning of this new way of funding our schools. I'm also a mother. I have a 9-year-old son, and he's the light of my life and my greatest teacher every day. And he and I spent a lot of time talking about his experiences in school and in life in general, and that definitely shows up in the book and in who I am. And finally, I'm a big believer in mindfulness. If you read the book, you'll see this. It shows up a lot throughout the book. But I really do see that mindfulness is a key to creating more inner peace and personal transformation, as well as a really powerful gateway for how we can create more centered and thoughtful leaders and empowered and creative kids. So I'm a really big believer in mindfulness, and you'll hear more about it as we talk today and again in the book. So what is the problem that the book is seeking to solve? And really the problem that I sought to solve in writing the book, and why I felt so compelled to write about it, was that I myself personally have struggled a lot with being able to implement the changes that I wanted to see in myself and in my school settings. And I've worked now for 25 years with educators across various school systems across the country to do the same thing. So we all go into education really wanting to make school and education meaningful and impactful for kids. And many of us end up feeling very overwhelmed and somewhat daunted by all the challenges that we face as educators, both with the students that come to us and their varied needs, but also the system and how it is not really set up to help us to be successful. And so it can feel really hard to be able to create effective change in our education settings. And as educators, I also feel like we're also kind of naturally predisposed to not take care of ourselves and not help ourselves to have a more empowered life. And so the problem the book is seeking to solve really is to help educators feel like they have permission to be able to take care of themselves and put themselves first, as well as the tools for how to do that very thing. And the research shows that when educators take care of themselves and start to focus on their own needs and feel good, they're actually better at doing their job. And so there's a real benefit for our students when we're able to focus in that way as well. So that's the challenge we're seeking to solve in this book. And really the big premise and why the whole idea with the eyes, which comes up a lot, is that we don't really see things as they are, we see them as we are. And really what that means is that we're influenced by our life and experiences, by who we are, by our family of origin, the values and messages received in our family of origin, by our culture, by the larger culture within the United States. And often those influences are things that we aren't even aware of anymore, but they impact the way that we see ourselves, we see our kids, and what we make meaning of what's possible. So really what I'm seeking to help us do through the three eyes, through intellect, insight, intuition, is to learn how to see a little bit more clearly, to understand when those when our perspective is being swayed, and to choose whether or not we want to go with that kind of influence perspective, or if we want to choose a different one. And in doing that, we just become much more empowered and more intentional in our lives. So those are the three I's, and that's going to help us to see more clearly. The first one is intellect. Intellect has two key components to it. One is cognition, which is our ability to do all the kinds of things that we do as human beings, to read, to have complex thoughts, to create, to invent, to analyze. It's all that logical thinking and reasoning. The other component of intellect is the ability to act as an observer. So we're able to, as human beings, to kind of step back and do what educators often call, we're talking about a lot, which is metacognition, which is being able to step back and monitor and assess ourselves and our thoughts, to have a level of self-awareness and to be able to kind of see ourselves almost as a third person. So that's intellect. The next I is insight. And insight also has two core components to it. So I define insight as deep understanding of a person or thing. And part of the deep understanding involves knowing what your self-identity is. What are your beliefs? How does your culture impact you? What learning have you had from your experiences as you've moved through life, as an educator, as a human being, as a man or a woman, whatever your experience is? What can you learn from, and how has your self-identity been shaped from those experiences? The other part of an insight is emotional intelligence, which really is about self-awareness. Knowing what our triggers are, what our strengths are, where are the places where we show up as our best self, and what are situations where our gremlin shows up instead, and we struggle to be able to maintain who we want to be able to be. So that's insight, just really knowing those parts of ourselves. Again, some of those are hidden and unseen parts, and some of those are the parts that we know very well. And I use these glasses throughout the book to help to kind of symbolize them. And so for insight, there's shading on those glasses because insight is such an instrumental part of who we are that it colors every single thing that we see and experience. It's like we're walking around with a pair of sunglasses on all the time. The third I is intuition, which I define as knowledge based on an instinct or feeling. And insight also has two core components to it. The first one is mindfulness. Told you it was coming back. And mindfulness really is about that mind-body connection, learning how to be more in the present moment, learning how to be more integrated into our bodies, not just in our heads, and seeing what information can be gleaned when we are much more grounded and present. The other is integrated information. So I also talk a lot in the book about how intuition is the place where we can also start to really create that new reality. We can start to rewire or change the way our brains are structured, and the way we respond to situations when we learn how to integrate the information from all three I's together. So that's the power of the three I's together. When we use the three I's together, it's a lot like the Indian parable of the six blind men and the elephant. So the six blind men and the elephant, this parable is that one day they took six blind men and they positioned them in different parts around an elephant. The man that was by the elephant's leg thought that he was by the trunk of a tree. The man that was by the elephant's side thought that he was at a wall. The man that was at the elephant's tusk thought that he was facing a spear. And the point of the parable is that when you only have one part or one view of something, you don't have the full picture. You can't possibly understand the complexity of what you're seeing. The six blind men needed the benefit of all six positions that the blind men were posted at to be able to understand they were facing an elephant. But because they only had that one perspective, their understanding was limited and incomplete and therefore inaccurate. And that's really the idea of the three I's. When we use intellect, insight, and intuition together, it's kind of like putting on a pair of three-dimensional glasses. It provides us with an awareness to understand ourselves, our experiences, and others in a new way with more depth and clarity, which also allows us then to envision a new reality. So we can start to be more empowered to identify what the best places are to move forward and to change once we understand how we're seeing and experiencing things in the first place. And there you go. That's the three-dimensional seeing. And so we talk about in the book, when you put on all three lenses together, the intellect, insight, and intuition, we have that three-dimensional seeing. We can see with more clarity of sight and identify the areas we want to change. And it also supports us to make more powerful decisions. And throughout the book, we talk about why that's important. And the last chapter of the book, we talk about how to put that together in a cycle of inquiry. So how to help you work on yourself as well as on your school settings, using all three I's through a cycle of inquiry. What's needed to be able to do this work? So, the biggest component we need to be able to start using our three I's more effectively and to start applying this to our personal lives as well as our professional lives is to lean into love, which I know can sound kind of weird or confusing, but love is really is the thing for us here. So this is an abbreviated quote from Paulo Freire, who says that the opposite of love is not hatred, but the fear to love, and the fear to love is the fear of being free. And really, I talk a lot about this in the book, and I'll say that the baseline for starting to use the three I's is to learn to actually come and love and appreciate ourselves more deeply. So it starts with self-compassion and self-love first before we can start to work with our students in our school communities in a new and a different way. And this is important because it helps us to be able to open up and be more free and available to information. So if we're in a space of love, we're able to see and take in information with less judgment, with less fear, and with an open mind and an open heart. But if we're staying in a place of fear, then we are shut down, we're closed off, and we're not able to learn or see things in a new and different way. So love softens us, love opens us, while fear hardens us and keeps us separated. And so what we need, the main tool we need for the work ahead is to love. So again, all we need is love. And this is actually our first opportunity to do a little bit of meaning making yourself. So I'm going to take a moment and stop speaking and ask you to please take notes in these three different categories. So just jot down your responses to these three categories on your piece of paper that you have. One is, how do you show love? The second category is, how do you receive love? And the third is, how do you love yourself? So go ahead and just jot down stream of consciousness, quick jotting of notes, however it's easiest for you in each of those three categories. And I'll be back in just a moment. Great. So wrap up whatever note taking that you're doing. And here's the first practice that I'd like to encourage you to take away from this webinar and start applying to your life from this day forward, which is pick one item from each of your lists. How do you show love? How do you receive love? And how do you love yourself? And try to do it every day if you can. So if you show love by saying hello to the people in your family or making a point of telling them how much you appreciate them, try doing that more. Try doing it every day if you can. If you receive love by, say, allowing your partner to do nice things for you, or by getting hugs from your kids, try to open up to that and just appreciate it more. Perhaps you're getting those hugs every day, but they've become routine. Try and really enjoy them more and appreciate the gift of that hug a little bit more. And then, how do you love yourself? This might have been the hardest one for many of you, but try and think of a way that you show care for yourself every day, and try and do it a little bit more. Try and treat yourself like your best friend. How would you treat your best friend? How would you talk to your best friend? How would you interact with your best friend? And start doing some of that for yourself. Start being your own best friend if you can. Here's why it's important, and here's the theory of action for the book, and how the two pieces fit together. So the main premise in the book is that we start with self-work to be able to get ready for schoolwork. So if we come to a greater sense of self-love and self-appreciation, two things come out of that. The first one is that we're able to then really have personal development empowerment. So we're able to identify the places we want to change in ourselves and start to do something about it. In our school context, the self-work leads to greater sense of self and self-compassion, which enables us to be able to enter in and stay in difficult conversations related to our school setting. So that could be having that greater sense of self-worth and self-compassion could help us to be more open to receiving feedback about our teaching, or more open to seeing how what we've been doing as a school leader has been effective or ineffective. So it softens our fear, allows us to open up to love and the expansiveness of love, which allows us to take in and see new information in different ways, so that we can then start to work with it. Because all of us are in schools because we want to make education better for our kids. We want to make the experience better for our kids. And so learning to love ourselves first and work on ourselves first helps us to be open and ready to do the schoolwork. And then schoolwork also has two parts. One is the actual doing of creating high quality, inclusive learning spaces. And in the book, we talk about this. What are some strategies for actually starting to put that stuff in place? Again, I use my doctoral research and my 25 years in education to inform a lot of that work. But it also begins with of establishing a culture of trust and accountability across. Same role alike. So teachers learn to have a culture of trust and accountability with one another, but also with our students and with our families, for leaders to be able to have that culture of trust and accountability. And in the book, we talk a lot about this. But unless there's a culture of trust and accountability, then people generally don't feel safe to show up as their full selves. And if they're not showing up as their full selves, they're not giving all that they can to their school setting. So we talk a lot about why being able to create that culture of safety and trust is important. And that culture of safety and accountability and trust also then creates the opportunity for there to be collaboration and transformation. So if people can truly show up and be themselves and offer their full selves to the work, then there's a real chance for transformation in our school settings. And the more we do this transformation and work on our school settings, it provides more opportunities for us to deepen and know ourselves more, to understand our strengths and our areas for growth, and on the circle goes. So that's the primary driver of the work in the book. And for me, this is a big deal. This coming into more love and compassion, both for ourselves, but also for our colleagues, students, parents, bosses, everybody. If we can infuse more of that love and compassion into the world, in particular into our education settings, I truly believe it's going to be the lever to transform our school settings as they are now, and by extension, the world. I really believe that education and schools is kind of ground zero if we want to start to create changes in our schools, in our country, and in the way that we interact with each other across the world, but also to address things like implicit bias and some of the other things that are dividing us as a country. I really believe that the pathway forward to doing something different is to coming into greater love and compassion, and to bring that into our settings. If we can do that, then I think we'll come to know each other on a much deeper level, and we'll be able to really create the educational settings that are going to help all of our students thrive. So I'm hoping you'll join me on this movement of bringing more love and compassion to the world. I truly think it's going to be our way to make things better and different for our kids. How do you do that? How do you start bringing more love and compassion in? This is the second core practice in the book, and your second opportunity for you to be able to participate in this webinar. And that's with gratitude. So take out that paper and pencil again, and just write down a couple of things that you might be grateful for. So what are some things that you're grateful for right now? And if you're struggling because you're having a hard day, think of just the basic things. Do you have a pencil and paper? Do you have a computer to be able to view this on, or a phone? Do you have a hand that helps you to be able to write down this list? Those are all great things to be grateful for. If you're struggling for some meatier things, at least start there. That's always a good spot. So write down a list of things that you're grateful for, and how you might be able to integrate gratitude a little bit more into your life. And I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, great. So wrap up whatever you're writing right now. And I'll talk a little bit about why gratitude is the thing. So gratitude helps us to start seeing how we're already being supported and held in the world. When we're grateful, we're able to see things outside of our own particular experience, and we can start to see how various people, animals, the universe, whatever you want to attribute it to, are supporting us. And that's helpful, especially for starting to go into a process of looking at ourselves more deeply. Knowing that we're supported and held and that we're not alone in this world is a really, really important first step. But there's also a lot of research on gratitude as well. And it's being shown more and more to have a really profound influence on us as human beings. But the research is showing, for example, that people who have a regular gratitude practice have improved health and sense of well being. It makes us more stress resistant. We're able to handle things better when we have a gratitude practice on a regular basis. Grateful people have a higher sense of self worth. So they know, so again, this first step to self compassion and self love. We feel better about ourselves when we're grateful for all the things around us. And it's also been proven to be great for students. So students that are supported to have a gratitude practice show better decision making around things like use of drugs and sexual behavior. They have higher GPAs, all sorts of things. So just being grateful for the things that you have, which is again simple, easy, and free, can have a lot of really profound benefits for us. And so it is a core practice that I encourage you, in addition to this love one, that you start integrating into your day, however you can. So figure out different ways to be grateful. I do have gratitude practice that I do every single day in a couple of different ways, and I got the inspiration from Einstein. So it says on there on the slide here, Einstein's 100 thank yous, and it said that Einstein tried to challenge himself to say thank you at least 100 times a day. And he's somebody who was really tapped into his intuition and into his ability to access information and knowledge outside of himself. And he attributed a lot of that to his ability to be grateful, to be able to open up to things that are different and outside of himself. And so some examples of a gratitude practice you could start doing if you don't have one already is to wake up first thing in the morning and to write down 10 things you're grateful for, the top 10 things that are on your mind. Ideally, you can think of different things every day and you're not repeating that same list of 10. But if all you have right now is the ability to list that same list of 10, that's great. Do that. I try and think and say thank you whenever I eat food. So I just stop for a moment before I eat and I say thank you. And I try to imagine all the different people and animals that contributed to whatever it is that I'm enjoying. So even if you think about a simple cup of coffee, there had to be a lot of cooperation and support to make that cup of coffee come about. So the people that helped to grow the coffee, the earth that nurtured the seeds for the coffee plant, the birds and animals that helped to make the soil fertile and rich, and that were there and participating in the growth of those coffee beans. The people that picked the coffee beans, people that dried the coffee beans and processed them into coffee, the people who ground the coffee beans and put them into the bag that I then bought at the store, the people who delivered those coffee beans to the store, people who kept the electricity on and helped to maintain the store and keep the store open and running every single day. And then my ability to take those coffee beans home through my car, driving my car to the store and back again, the ability to have a car, and taking them home and having the electricity and the clean running water to be able to take those coffee beans and turn them into a cup of coffee. So if you imagine all the different people, hundreds of people had to contribute to my one cup of coffee, people and animals. And if I can think of that and say thank you to that, then it's amazing to imagine what else, how I'm being supported in that way. So just having that cup of coffee, the amount of cooperation support that need to go into that is pretty profound. And when I remember to stay in that place, I just feel kind of in awe of a lot of the experiences that I have. It definitely helps me to see how the universe is supporting and contributing to my well-being. So are you ready to get started? Hopefully the ideas in this webinar at least have gotten you started with some sense of what you're going to get from the book. In the book, you'll learn a lot more strategies and a lot more research to support both why using the 3 I's is helpful, how they apply to the education context and to our personal life. You'll also get some really clear examples of how they work. And I use myself as a model for that. So the reason why I'm so passionate about this work and about the content of the book is that I applied all of it to my own life. And it's really, really created a profound change for who I am, how I go about my life, and how I do my work in school settings. And so you'll be able to follow that and see that in this course of the book as well. And really my goal is for everybody, especially educators who are near and dear to my heart, to come to greater self-love and compassion. So my goal is that by the time you leave reading the book, you feel more grounded and connected to yourself. You also feel like you have that permission to love yourself and to put your needs first, knowing that you putting your needs first is going to help you to show up for your kids in the way that they need you to as well. So I really hope that you participate and read the book, and also go deeper in some other ways. So in addition to the book, there are a lot of free resources on the website. I have a blog that comes out every couple of weeks, a podcast also that comes out every couple of weeks, and some free downloads. So, and new content's going to be added all the time. So keep checking back in and seeing what's there. If you want to go deeper beyond the content of the book, then there's a couple of online courses that are available to you. One is called the Beliefs Lab, where we really help you to use those three eyes to identify some beliefs that's shading on your glasses that might be influencing you, and some tools to start to change those. I also have an online course that's also interactive, called the Self-Work School Work Cycle. And that's when I show you how to apply these concepts to help you improve yourself, work on yourself, and build your own self-love and compassion. At the same time that I help you to imagine and implement something that you want to change in your school context, whether you're a classroom teacher or a principal or a district administrator. You learn how to use those two tools together. And then finally, if you want to go really deep, I'm also a personal coach. And so if you want some one-on-one mentoring to access and use your three eyes, and some really personalized and detailed support on how to have the three eyes help you in your life, but also help you to tackle whatever specific issues you're wanting to work on, I'm available for coaching as well. So those are different ways to go deeper. Super excited that you joined us today. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. The book is available at Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Just search for me or An Educator's Guide for Using Your Three Eyes, and it'll come up. And again, visit my website, www.your3eyes.com, and follow Your Three Eyes on Instagram and Twitter, again, for some more immediate and even daily doses of inspiration and insight that I come across as we go throughout our day. So thank you again. Thank you so much. Thank you for being in education and for supporting students and being in their lives, and for all your dedication and hard work. Thanks so much.